Coinophilia. Well, in my previous video, I explained how Coinophilia, which is a biological principle that has to do with natural selection and Mother Nature, that is built into all species that we know of, that drives, that guides our sexual selection, and is why we have such things as species and subspecies. It restricts who you will be sexually attracted to, because you have, whether you like it or not, you have an attraction system, and your attraction system works on only a few principles. It does not work on many different principles. And the major overwhelming principle that it works upon is, speaking in the most broadest fashion, is that it looks for coenophilia. So coenophilia is the principle that organisms, like Homo sapiens, but the same will be true for a dog, cat, bee, and so forth, wants to mate with, wants to reproduce with another organism that has a minimum of deviant or unusual traits, features, like phenotypes, like a big nose or big ears or any other type of biological, mutation that is not common to your species. So, people in our society that have very big ears or very big nose or very crooked nose or, an unusual feature, a weird head shape, a weird whatever, they might be regarded as not attractive. And the reason why Mother Nature's done this, there's a few reasons, but one reason is that it's believed, and you can go and read about this all across the internet, because it has to be true, or something similar to this has to be true, guiding us. One reason is that if an organism does have a high amount of deviant features, looks significant, which is another way of saying their behaviour or their physical appearance looks very different to other people in that subspecies or race or whatever, then it means that they have lots of traits that may not be advantageous, that may not be genetically fit, that may not produce healthy, fit offspring, because the majority of deviant new features, new traits that are given in a mutation are not actually successful and are not beneficial to the organism. Only a few will be. So if an individual has a lot of these, looks very different, has a lot of different mutations or traits, Mother Nature has biologically designed us to not reproduce with those people. Now, that is basically what coenophilia is. And it's one reason why you're not going to be sexually attracted to a dog or a cat. You're only sexually attracted to things that look like your species. That's a biological fact. That's built into the attraction system. Now, in Homo sapiens, the attraction system looks for, well, this is highly complicated, but basically it looks for appearance. So it's not just, it is appearance, but to say it's appearance is not completely correct. It's facial appearance. It cares the most, overwhelmingly, about facial appearance. That's what it looks for. And it looks for two principal things, of which we just spoke about. Coenophilia is the overwhelming principle that is occurring. But if you break it down, it's looking for proportions in the face, that is, the size of the ears, the size of the eyes, the size of the head shape, the relationship, the size differences between all those things, the mouth, the jaw, the ears, the eye shape, the colour, the skin healthiness. It's looking for all them, and it's looking for, someone without deviant features, someone that is close as possible to the species average. And if you was to collect all the millions of pictures of humans of your society, of your race or whatever, and you merged them all together and created one face, that face would be good looking. And it's been done on the internet. That face would have a minimum, would look like the species average. And would have a minimum of deviant features. It would have a minimum of deviant features because it's blended all the faces together. Now, and so that would be considered good looking, and it is. You can go and look at it on the internet. Go and look at people when they've merged all the faces together. The species average is very good looking. Now, so what it's looking for is the proportions, which has to do with Coenophilia, regarding the lack of deviant features, and it also looks for another principle of human nature and animal nature that has to do with symmetry. And symmetry, and by the way, I don't have a symmetrical face, and I don't have really a strongly, I actually do have quite a deviant face in many regards to my ethnicity, my race, and that, which is why I've spent quite a long time trying to understand this and trying to understand human nature, to be completely honest. And the symmetry aspect of it, I mean, it's not just symmetry. That is insane to think that it only cares about symmetry. People have said on the internet, oh, a symmetrical face is a good looking face. Yes, it is, in many times, of course it is. It wants symmetry. But it doesn't just want symmetry. It wants these proportions to not be deviant. That's the main thing. That's the main thing that it cares about. Secondly, it cares about symmetry. Why does it care about symmetry? Multiple explanations again. If your body, genetically when it's growing, is able to produce a largely symmetrical face and symmetrical body, but it cares about the face way more than it does anything else. Your face is your CV, your resume, your biological identity is your face. If you're able to biologically reproduce your cells so that you look symmetrical, that shows, potentially as one explanation, that shows a high level of genetic fitness, which means that your offspring maybe have a greater chance of being healthier and having a lack of, biological problems like diseases and so forth. It may represent biological fitness if someone's symmetrical. But there's another reason that is even deeper than that, that has to do with not just sexual selection, but has to do with just a principle of biology, and not just that is to say that systems, or is to say that computational systems and like the human eye, say, when it's perceiving something, it's easier to see symmetry. It's easier to read and process symmetrical data, which is what is ultimately happening when you see a symmetrical face or a symmetrical object or whatever. So there is a preference that's built into the whole of life, if you will, that has a preference for symmetry as opposed to asymmetry. That has to do with how things are processed at a computational level to do with having things that look the same. That's basically what I believe is occurring. So it's interesting, and that but that has some terrible consequences in that, and we can talk about as well. We can talk about so what does that mean? Does that mean that we have an attraction system that is the same in all humans? Well, yes and no. So we have a Homo sapien attraction system that is broadly the same in all humans, but so we all have the same, broad Homo sapien AS attraction system, which is some type of modularized system inside the brain that governs who we're romantically and sexually attracted to. But it does not mean that the literal exact attraction system is endowed to each child every time it's born. What I mean by that is, I believe it could very well be true, and I don't know this for a fact, but I believe it would be very true that an Indian child born has a slightly different set of parameters to what the child will be genetically endowed to being physically attracted to. It would be insane for an Aboriginal Australian child, or a Indian child, or a Native American child, or a Caucasian English child, or whoever the heck you want to pick, or a Han Chinese child, to be genetically endowed to have a preference to a different organism, a different subspecies, because that's ultimately what races are essentially. Possibly. I'm not saying again that's a fact, but it would be insane that the phenotypic differences in, say, an Aboriginal Australian or a Bantu African would be preferred to an Indian ethnicity face with the broad phenotypic markers that the child has been biologically endowed by having parents that are both Indian or both largely Indian. So what I mean by that is that yes, there's an attraction system that is the same in all humans. You could say it is the same in all humans, but I believe the different races and different ethnicities will give a very small different endowment in terms of the parameters that are selected to be attracted to could be different. So a Han Chinese child could have already has slight affinity to Han Chinese faces with their particular proportions and their particular skin colour and so forth. So the child gets a small difference in endowment in the different races in the world. This is something that I'm just talking about, which I don't know is an absolute fact. I could be wrong, but I believe it probably is true. And also, there's a critical path window, I believe, that means the faces the child is exposed to when it's growing up in a critical path window over a few year period. Maybe it's even later than that. Maybe it's in the puberty time. But I believe at some point when the child is growing up, the attraction system, the parameters that are put into it, so is it going to prefer a Bantu African mouth, a Bantu African nose, a Bantu African face, or is it going to prefer a Western face, a Eurasian face, or whatever you want to call it, or is it going to prefer an Aboriginal face, or whatever? Now, in ours, but we know that the kid, and basically, yeah, so it has the genetic endowment, so it has this attraction system. Maybe with the particular attraction system that it's been endowed upon, maybe there's a pre-affinity, there's a pre-preference, a setting of the parameters that it's going to want more of. It wants to see a Bantu face for a Bantu child. It wants to see an Indian face for an Indian child, slightly. But that's not to say that you can't be attracted to other races. Of course you can. But it has to give some type of preference to a face, because it's looking for the species average, because Coenophilia is there. And so if everyone's got a wide nose and a small head shape and small ears, it's not going to, and the child sees millions of faces or thousands of faces or hundreds of faces that look like this, it's going to want faces that look like that. So during this window, this critical path window, determines who you're going to be attracted to, basically. And throughout human history, I'm assuming we would have had less knowledge of different ethnic faces, because we would have seen our own tribe, and we would not have generally seen loads of different ethnicities thousands and thousands of years ago. We wouldn't have done, probably. Now we do. Now we live in multicultural societies where we see many different ethnicities. But we know that the child, at the point of being born, because we've took a baby that's only a few days old, that's seen hardly any faces, and we've shown it pictures of what are considered good-looking people and ugly people, and guess what? The baby selects the good-looking child, good-looking human. It wants to touch and play with the good-looking face, not the ugly one. Now that means there has to be a genetic endowment of this attraction system. Of course there is. There's a genetic endowment of the attraction system that is broadly the same in all humans, but there's a slight change in the parameters depending upon the particular endowment of the child, which depends upon the different ethnicities, in my opinion, that have endowed it, if you will. And furthermore, is also affected by the types of faces, the phenotypes that the child is exposed to during a critical path window. So if the child only sees Bantu faces with a wide nose or whatever it is, you know, and black skin and all that, and afro hair and all that, then you would strongly think the child would select for that, because Coinophilia tells us that it wants people with a minimum deviance in features. And if you've only been seeing faces that are Bantu African, then of course it treats me as something with a deviant feature, and it won't be attracted to me. But that basically something like that is happening, in my opinion. So Coenophilia is the overwhelming principle of our attraction system, but at the same time we can split it up and say that it's looking for proportions, so a certain nasal length, how much the nose protrudes, how much the eyes protrude, the size of the eyes, the size of the jaw, the size of the style of the eyes, if you will, the style of the ears, or the shape of the ears, the shape of the head, how wide it is, how long it is, and so forth. It's looking for all those things plus symmetry. It's looking for. And the principle of Coenophilia means that we want people with, you know, less mutant and deviant features, like a really big hooked nose, if you're in a society that doesn't have those features, and or really big ears or really small ears if your society has the opposite way. So it's looking for people with a minimum of those features, what you might call closer to the species average, because those features, those deviances, are generally going to be not advantageous for the organism. They're not going to bring a higher level of genetic fitness or whatever, and compared to someone that has a more higher number of common traits that we know are already genetically fit. So that's basically what is happening in our attraction system, and that means that basically we really are superficial organisms. We've been biologically designed to be like this, even though it's totally immoral, and that even though Mother Nature gave us the ability to understand that, to understand, I mean, we're the only organism that understands this. No other organism understands Coinophilia or understands natural selection and all those differences, you know. But we are able to do that, and we know, as humans, we know that it is totally wrong to select someone based upon physical appearance only. But nevertheless, most people will do that. You know, you see someone you're physically attracted to, and so you will think, oh, I want to have sex with them, I want to get know more about them. But when you find out that they're Machiavellian, low empathy, care about nothing, highly selfish creatures, which again is also an adaptation. Yes, they can't control that. That's an adaptation that they've been genetically endowed because of their environment. And actually Machiavellian people or low empathy people are generally more successful at having offspring. They are more with women. They get more women and they get more sex, and they do that because of many different reasons. One is that they are able to manipulate women more. Number two is that they're good looking, a lot of them. Number three, and women select based upon physical appearance just like men do, but women are far more selective and far more restrictive, in that you have to be good looking to be with a girl. Many girls, they're super, at least Western girls are. And another thing is that women want a bodyguard. The bodyguard hypothesis tells us that women want to feel protected, want to feel security, and these men, these alpha males, a lot of them, that have low empathy, that don't care about anything but themselves, they're extreme selfish, that again are an adaptation. they feel as though, look, that they've got this social status that they can protect me when they can control other males. They can control and defeat other males. They're bullies, they're controlling, manipulative people, and they want to be protected. Women do, and so they have a biological adaptation to that requirement. It's a requirement, just like it's a requirement for women to select not only based upon physical appearance, which is the main overwhelming drive, but they also do select upon who can accrue resources, which throughout millions of years of human evolution would have been access to food, and access now, which shelter and food, which is the main thing why we're alive. We need food. It was, food was not guaranteed years ago. We had to go and get it, and having a woman, seeing a man that could get food and control it, the supply of food and so forth, was extremely important. And so women have a requirement now, and you can see that in that, they want men with lots of money as a matter of financial security, which brings them shelter and food and products and other things in life. But that's what it would have been years ago. So yes, so women have this biological adaptation to be highly selective, and they want a bodyguard, and they want someone who can accrue resources, which was typically food. And these men, these alpha males, these low empathy Machiavellians, these selfish people, are able to demonstrate fitness to these women, and they're biologically attracted to them. And they're able to manipulate them and lie and cheat and do all the other things, but yet they have offspring with them. And yet, even though we know all this, we know that it is absolutely insane to be attracted to anyone like this. It is insane to do that. They are scumbags, they are horrible people. But Mother Nature designed them to be like that, and also designed women to be attracted to that. So it is a total mess, and it's why it's fascinating, reading about human sexual selection. But all this about it doesn't matter what's on your outside, it's what's on the inside is just total BS. The attraction system and Coenophilia tells us that that's BS. It is total fantasyland BS. I mean, do those same people think that the elephant man could be considered attractive? I mean, if it was just about who you are on the inside, does anyone believe that a girl would find the elephant man who had that gross physical deformity that has nothing to do with something he did? It's a genetic mistake. Does that mean that you could be attracted to that person? Of course you couldn't, because the attraction system prevents us. And the attraction system also prevents, even though I said there are slight differences in the human attraction system based upon the parameters that are passed into it, which means based upon the faces it sees growing up, and based upon the particular genetic endowment from the parents that is given to it. It's also, but it also means that yes, even though I've said this slight variation in the attraction system based upon the faces it sees and the genetic endowment, the parameters that we put into the attraction system, if you will, it also means that everyone, essentially everyone, has broadly the same limits to the what it will ever accept as attractive. So every human, all Homo sapiens that are the same species, will have the same maximum limit of what it will accept as a good-looking face. So, it would never ever permit an alien face or a different animal like a dog or a cat to be physically attractive. It would never permit that, because Coenophilia ensures through millions of years of human evolution that we will only be attracted to people that broadly look like the same species. We can't be attracted to an alien Martian if you can pretend that an alien Martian with a big massive face and big eyes and all that came to this planet Earth. It would never permit it to be attracted to that physically, and it would never permit it. But having said that, it is true that different species of archaic humans but they are still of the overall same species in many regards. You know, like Denisovans would have had sex with Neanderthals and would have had sex with other archaic humans that were before us, like Homo erectus or whatever. It would that are on our same lineage, because obviously Neanderthals are dead and Denisovans are dead. I mean, there's some Neanderthal genes still in our DNA, and there's some Denisovans in some of Southeast Asian DNA. There's not in mine. There is some Neanderthal, there will be, because archaic humans and Homo sapiens would have existed at some and would have had sex with Neanderthals that are not Homo sapiens. So Homo sapiens would have had sex with, well, even though they looked somewhat slightly different, but it permitted them to have sex. But it would never permit a totally different species to have sex together. It would never permit a human to be attracted to a dog or a cat, or a fish or a bee or something like that. It would never permit that. And Coenophilia is the reason why it would not permit it. Because that principle is genetically built into humans. It is, it's a fact. It's built into our attraction system. And this is what people deny, and they you know, so that does mean that even if the kid was exposed to only faces of dogs and it would not be attracted to the dog. It couldn't be, unless it had a mental disorder. If it had a mental derangement, like some autistic people lack the ability to require human romantic and sexual relationships. They don't have any drive for it because of a genetic disorder. Well, you might have an accident and it rips a part of the brain out, and they no longer can have a desire to have sex or a relationship. Well, yeah, if you have that, then but that's abnormality. That's nothing to do with the human species. That's nothing to do with what's natural for the human species. So yeah, so human attraction is complicated, but it is unfortunately only bothered about physical appearance for the most part, with the principle of Coenophilia being overwhelming, with the attraction of the face being overwhelmingly bothered about. And so that means that for the vast majority of people, the best chance they have of getting a girlfriend is to improve their physical appearance, basically, because your other aspects that make you a human, it doesn't care about. And even though other aspects of your human design that have nothing to do with the attraction system understands that the way someone looks is a genetic lottery and nothing to do with who they are as a person, their intelligence, their caringness, how selfless they are, and so forth. It does not permit humans to look past the attraction system, to look past the physical appearance requirement as dictated by Coenophilia. It doesn't allow you to get past that. You cannot think to yourself, oh, I know that girl is really nice as a person, so I'm therefore attracted to her. No, it does not permit that to occur. It only wants you to have sex with people who it believes are genetically fit and have a minimum deviance of traits that have to do with the genetic fitness and so forth. And that's what she did. That's what Mother Nature chose millions of years ago in human and mammalian and animal evolution. It's what she chose based upon the constraints that occurred at the time that have to do with things like natural principles of the universe, like some computational efficiency, like things like gravity, like other aspects of the universe that don't necessarily have to do with life, that have to do with the actual principles, the actual existing universe framework, if you will, that we live under, that have nothing to do with life even. But ultimately Mother Nature did not make all these choices out of complete free choice. It's a complicated interaction between the natural world and her own choices and life, and ultimately, but she's made us in this way. So even though we can understand everything I've just said and everything why it's ridiculous to select based upon physical appearance, even if it does slightly represent a good looking face will represent genetic healthy fitness and healthy offspring, the fact is the difference, if ugly people had children all the time, the kids would still live to a high, it would not be a significant difference. They wouldn't all be dropping dead of diseases and stuff. But the attraction system is so fixed and so strong that it does not allow us to strongly deviate from it, even though another part of our composition, of our mental states, understands that it's wrong to select based upon attraction. She doesn't allow us to not do that, which is a real shame. So that means that for most men, the only thing that value that you can bring to a woman is your physical appearance, and which is why if you can't get a girl in your own society because you're a 4, 3, 4, 5, you're better off forgetting it and going to a different country where they won't have the same standards of beauty, where they won't have Madison Avenue to the same degree, sticking good-looking faces absolutely everywhere, where they'll be adapted to a slightly different face anyway, because they don't see your Farang face or your foreign face all the time, your phenotypes, and where, because they're poorer societies, and because of the requirement, especially in women, to have resources and to acquire someone who can protect them and have resources, they may look past your appearance and select you because, as well, they're super poor countries. In most parts of the world, it's super poor, in like Asia and parts of the Middle East and so forth, and in Africa. So you may be able to get an Asian girl who's very attractive, whereas you could not get one in the Western world who was very attractive. And you may as well give up, because unless you're super lucky, you may never ever get who you're attracted to. Whereas in China, in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Malaysia, in wherever, in Africa, you may get a girl who is absolutely drop dead, 9 or 10, you may do, and who you're physically attracted to completely, and who you have amazing sex with. You may find that, but you would never ever find that in your own society if you've been rejected for years and years, unless you're super lucky, and because of particular circumstances you're able to luckily get one. But the vast majority is just rejection. Why waste your time? Go to a different country, get a girl from a different country, move to a different country, or bring them to your country, and you'll be a lot happier than trying to chase this attraction system of Western girls, which is hyper looks based, hyper looking for the top percent, so restrictive and so strict that you're just wasting your time and wasting your life chasing something you'll never get.